Hey everybody, Brett Tadlock here, TN Artist. Hope you're doing fantastic wherever you're at today, tonight, tomorrow, whatever. So, wanted to work on just another paint this like Bob kind of thing, just because I thought it was kind of fun. But also, I wanted to try and answer a question that somebody else had from our members. Now, in the community section, you can post like your paintings, and if you want feedback, sorry about that, didn't mean to hit the microphone. If you want to post your paintings there, you can get feedback if you want. If you don't want any feedback, you can just post it and say, hey, I did this. And I'm always going to be encouraging with it because I think it's awesome to be brave enough to post your stuff. I know what that feels like. So today, one of the questions that was asked in there was, how do I get that atmospheric painting of distant trees and so forth? And I thought, okay, well, that's a good question. It's called atmospheric perspective for those that don't know. And basically, the stuff further away from you is going to look different than the stuff up close from you. That's why it looks, in perspective. But that was one of the questions. The other one was, am I too old to do this? A lot of our community members are what would be quote unquote called older. Anywhere from like 40s, 50s, 60s, a couple 70-year-olds. I don't know if we have any octogenarians in here. I hope so. But, am I too old? The answer is no, you're not, especially when you're doing digital painting, because you don't have to break anything out. You don't have to worry about, hey, I'm not feeling good today, but oh, that's going to dry. Or, oh, I can't get it dry. You can use Rebelle like I've got here, and it works great for doing prints for yourself, prints for people that you know. So you can really have some fun with it and go around. So no, you're not too old, and yes, you can do this, and I'm going to walk you through how. So the image we're going to be using today, this is from season 25, episode 3. It's Bob Ross's Not Quite Spring Season. And we're going to talk about how to get some of this look. Now, I'm not necessarily going to try and create the exact painting here, but this is going to be our inspiration piece to jump off from and go, and use it. Now, if you wanted to use this and be very, very close to what he's got here, if you bring up, this is the reference images, and this is found under Windows, Reference Images. If you click that, it'll bring up a little sub window right here. You can tell it add, and it'll import something that you've saved. So like if you've got a picture of your own that you've saved or something like that, you could do that and then use it in here as a guide for everything. Now, one thing, this is Bob Ross's stuff. I'm full credit to him, not trying to use his stuff, not trying to sell his stuff. But a lot of people ask me about how do I get that same kind of look and feel. And so that's the only reason I'm using this. If you wanted to do similar and you wanted to paint this exact image for yourself, okay, you would open it up here, you would click on it, because if you click on it, and it'll show up like this. And if you click on it, it'll show it like this. If you come up here and click this little icon, okay, if you hover over it, it'll usually say show on screen. But anyway, let me get rid of this one. I don't need that one. You can click this little icon right there to make sure that's showing. And then you can click that one to move it around, to resize it. Bob's paintings are usually 18 by 24. This one is a little bit more horizontal. And this was from PBS's website, so I'm assuming that this is what the full painting looks like. Okay, I was just trying to find one that had some interest and could possibly help answer that other question. So you could bring it in here, you could stretch it to fit if you wanted. But you gotta be careful because you're gonna get too stretchy if you do it. But like I said, he's usually doing 8 by 24, so 18 tall by 24 wide. This is what this is set to, that same ratio. So, but this one, like I said, obviously was done a little bit more of a horizontal type canvas. Not sure what size he did, don't really care. So that's one of the reasons I'm not going to use this I'm not going to trace this or anything, but you could bring it in here. Once you get it where you like it, then you would just click off of that, and you can literally grab a pencil and just start drawing. Okay, and then when you close it, boom, you've got your stuff there. Okay, so just a way to kind of play around with stuff. Big fan of putting it on there, unless it's just, again, if you don't feel like drawing it or you can't draw. I have a lot of people that tell me, I can't draw. Well, they don't draw. Take your own pictures and trace them. That is completely fine. Many, many masters did that. They would make drawings They would then make cartoons of them. They would trace them. They would use rudimentary camera obscuras where the pinhole in a box would project it onto the wall. They would trace it. It's perfectly fine. Who cares? Somebody will say, that's cheating. Really? Show me the rule book. Okay, there isn't one. So shut up. All right, so I'm going to start on this. And let's get a little bit of the sky color in here. I have the canvas is set to just the canvas. This is the default. I don't really have many, actually I don't even think I have any custom papers. Saw an amazing thing on Rebelle that they put out. I didn't realize that Escape Motions did such effort to make their canvases and papers. Like they make them. And then they photograph them with like this microscopic camera that just gets amazing detail, and that's why you can do the nanopixel stuff and scan it up. Anyway, had no idea that it went into that, but it's kind of cool. So anyway, but this is one of the default ones, Canvas, Artist, color right here, not quite white, so it's just off-white if you want the code. There it is right there. Okay, and the reason I do that is so that my whites can look whiter and stuff. So anyway. All right, and I've got the oil colors over here. I could break this down to just the same ones that Bob used. Okay, I'm not going to overly worry about it right now because I like my own stuff over here. So I'll just keep all these. And it makes it a little bit easier for those of you that are watching that aren't really confident to choose your own colors. So let's go over here to the Express Oils. You could go into the oils, but I'm going to stick over here with the Express Oil. And these are my brushes, so if you don't have them, you can use them, but you could also use other ones that are available as well in system to get similar. So I'm going to, left and right bracket will let you resize these. I'm going to bring this up in size. We're just going to add a little bit of pigment to this. I'm going to add maybe a little bit of this Naples yellow. And just get down on here, not overly interested in anything other than a general placement of color. So you can be very loose with this. All right, so I've got some of that yellowish color in there. I've got the opacity is set to 90%, the oiliness is 75. I'm going to put it on 1 for the brush setting. So I've got a little bit of that in there. Let's grab a little bit, just a little bit of orange. We'll just throw a few spots of orange here and there. Okay. And let's come down. And let's grab just blue, which as you can see is a little bit more violet color. And I'm just going to really drop in small amounts because this is a pretty strong color. And the same thing with the phthalo blue. All right, now I'm going to switch to 4, and I'm just going to kind of swirl my brush, and I'm going to start blending these together. And you'll notice I'm going clockwise and counterclockwise. And do pick up your brush every now and then, because otherwise the color that you're smearing will completely obliterate the other one if you don't pick it up and let them blend. Even switch my cloud brush. Go over here, there's one brush. I thought I had these together to each other. Let's see, where is it? Oh, there it is, cloud brush. And this one. This one gives a much more kind of a softer kind of blend. Bring this around and get a little bit of color into this. I like painting this way versus the mixing palette that is available on the screen. I prefer painting on mixing on my canvas. It's probably a holdover from being a traditional trained painter. So, because I have a minor in painting for my Bachelor of Fine Arts degree. The only reason I don't have a major is because it wasn't offered when I got my degree. It is now for the university I went to, which is still in my same hometown, but it wasn't then. So I'm just kind of pushing some of this down. This kind of purplish color is going to mute some of this yellowish color, but I still want it to be a hint of it there. Okay, it's giving us some interesting looks. It's dirty color down here, obscured by the mountain. Okay, and then again, just softly. Scrub it around. I'm going to put just a little bit, I'm literally just going to kind of tap this in here. Then we'll go and go back to my blending brush. A very strong color. It will take over if you're not. But I just want a hint of that kind of reddish kind of color cast into it. So I don't want this to be overly strong, just kind of there, you know. Alright, so let's come back over to our blues, and let's grab a little bit of this Prussian blue. That is one of Bob's colors. And let's throw that in a little bit, and we can grab just a little bit of black as well. Throw that in next to it. And maybe we'll put just a few touches here and there, a bit more storm cloudy. So if you have my brushes, which I know a lot of people that are patrons do, the brush is designed to really do a lot of this heavy lifting for you. You can, again, use Rebelle's default brushes to do this, okay? My brushes are just organized to do it a little bit better, in my opinion. So I made them to make life easier for myself, and then easier for you guys. All right. Okay, I'm going to switch over to this other brush. And I like switching between these brushes because it really does kind of vary up the clouds a little bit. This one is geared more towards like doing the horizontal part. So like if you get the other fluffy part done, you can use this one to kind of go back and forth and do your horizontal bottom of the clouds, if you will. So like, see, like right here, if I wanted to level this out and give kind of that bottom look of where the clouds are receding into the distance, I can do that. You kind of start from the bottom and then give a little bit more pressure as you come upwards, and that makes the clouds look like they're a little bit closer to you. But see how it's got that right there? And then I can just come back on. This one has some cloud images are part of the brush that I took, some photographs when I made it. But see, I can really kind of grab and push some of this around. Because some of that's embedded in there, I can get that real cloud look. So there we go. Alright, that is a very thin, light colored cloud, almost a pastel watercolor kind of a look. If you wanted to go darker, but you didn't, you know, like you're like, hey, I really like how this looks, but I don't want to add more paint and mess up the look of the cloud. I like the look of the clouds. Well, one of the great things about digital, come over here, right click, go to duplicate, and there you go. You just added more pigment on top of it. Now you could go a step further and turn off pigment and then go to something like multiply, and that's going to change it just slightly. It's a little bit different look. So without it, and then, but it does give you a little bit more of an exposure. Okay. Now one of the cool things about doing multiply on top here is that you can come in and switch to an eraser mode and erase out highlights, and then go 4 and blend it around. So you can start to really pick out where you want your highlights and stuff to be. Okay. Move this paint around, the more it affects what's underneath it. It really kind of starts breaking it up. Cloud foam. I'm going to right click on this. I'm going to go copy brush set. I don't think I have that one over here. Just double checking real quick to see. Do paste. There's cloud foam. Now I'm going to bring it down here with my other cloud brushes. But this cloud foam one, it is a much softer brush. Okay. Merge these two, so I'll just go over here and then merge layers, which is also Control E, and I'm going to turn pigment back on. And then I'm going to really soften this. So this one is, if you're a Bob fan, this is where he would say, you know, take some air to softly blend out the colors and get rid of those harsh transitions. That's exactly what I'm doing here. So this brush works really well for clouds, and it works really well for sea foam, hence why it's called cloud foam. All right. So now I've got all that there. So let's add a little bit of actual blue. So I'm going to grab some of the Prussian blue, or I could even go with the cerulean blue. And I'm going to add in a spot of color up here. And maybe a little bit over here. Back to my blending brush. And just swirl that around. Basically what I'm doing is kind of a negative painting technique, where I'm painting and then getting rid of the... But see how just doing this gives that real feel to these edges of clouds, right? So now if I wanted to, I could really play that up and then come in here and grab, like, press Alt and then select that color. And I can come in and bring my opacity way up to 100%. Bring my size with a left way down and pick some spots where these random edges are and just kind of follow them around like so. Try to vary it a little bit. You don't want these to repeat too much. It is going to get obliterated here in a second though, so it's not like you have to overly worry about it, but you just don't want it to back up. I'm going to press 4 and I'm going to just slightly blend that like so. And you can sit here and play with this and really build up some intricate layers of clouds. I've done it in other videos, so you can find cloud tutorials that way. And I can just go hit 2, hit 4, kind of throw it in there, blend it around. Let's see how that's going to give you that kind of really cool highlights. You could press 3 if you wanted. And I like to just kind of randomly throw those in there and squiggle them around and then push 4. And then come back. I'm just swirling it. Notice that I'm just swirling the brush, letting this do the work a little bit if I was using the corner of my 2-inch or 1-inch brush. And then just leaving spots of highlights. Okay. So that's how you can build up a really in-depth cloud background. All right, so we've got that there. That'll work for what we're doing. Now let's create a new layer. And we're going to go over here to our selection tool. We're going to go to freehand. We're going to go to add to selection, just like that. And we're going to now create the mountains. So again, if you can't draw, right? Let me show you how to do this. All right, if you look at Bob's mountains here, all right, I'm going to just kind of bring these down. All right, so let's look at this. So if you look here, these are really kind of rough triangles, and they are, so let's make some rectangles. All right, so I'm going to grab this, and maybe that's that middle peak right here. Okay, we'll drag that over. When it's selected, press enter. All right, now we've got this section here, so let's bring over another rectangle. Press enter. And look, there's another one right here. So let's come over here, make a little rectangle press enter. There's one right there coming off that peak, so let's do that. Enter right there. Enter. And there's one over here. That's a real big one, so let's just do this like so. Okay. So now we have the bare bones of the shape, right? Okay, I'll put this. All right, so we've got all that kind of laid out in there, but obviously we don't want to do just rectangles because that would look kind of weird, unless you're doing like Roblox or Minecraft or something. Yeah, let's bring this one off here. All right, so now we have all these chunky things here. So let's go over here and let's grab the freehand tool, and right here in the middle he's got a peak, so let's just draw a peak and then come down and connect to that right there. Done. Okay, now we've got where this kind of curves down, and we're going to fix this in a minute. So we're just going to kind of come down, curve up, down, and it selects it. All right, so that's a little bit too curved, so let's come over like this. And we've got that. So this one kind of swoops down, comes over, down to this one. Enter. Little gap there. Boom. Got this little section that comes down over here to this, and then this is kind of up and then down. Just kind of fades off down into that. And we can even just kind of fade this down and around as well. And swirl this one over like so. Get this, go down from this one, so down here to this, which is this one. So let's just kind of bring that around and over. And then we've got this bad boy over here in the side, which will just kind of fade off. Okay, so even if you can't draw, quote unquote can't draw, you can make these kind of shapes. Okay, that is not too difficult to do, but it may be difficult to see. So let's kind of see a little bit. Now I'm going to show you a little trick here as well. You can go to the color pick tool and pick a color from here. You can also come over to your tool here, like your fill, and if you hit Alt, it becomes that color picker tool, see? So let's grab this dark color here. All right, and I just randomly picked the color. So, and then let's come over, and sometimes when you select it, it'll go back to the brush, so I just had to go back and click either L or click fill, and let's fill that. All right, so now we can see a little bit more of our mountain. We've got this weird bump right here, so we can actually do Control D and deselect, and then we could come in with our eraser if we wanted to, like square hard, and bring the size down with the left bracket and just kind of erase away some of this. And all we're doing is we're just trying to get rid of the weird shapes that we don't maybe like maybe something's a little too bumpy, or it's not quite the look we're wanting. Then we can get rid of that. Okay. And just all we're paying attention to is this silhouette of the top here, this part. Okay. All this down here, don't worry about. All right, now you can also come back to your brush, all right, and I would say go up to something like maybe rice paper or cat tongue, 100% opacity, and just kind of again change the shape ever so till you start to get the shape that you want. This is why I would say don't trace, because this is good practice for you. Now with some of my more elaborate paintings, I do give you guys the line art, which is fine. There's nothing wrong with doing that, especially if you're just trying to paint to have fun. But if you're wanting to kind of learn how to set this up for working with some of your own paintings, I'd suggest doing it this way. I'm going to bring this fellow over a little bit, and I want to bring this up. With trees, so not overly concerned. So now we have kind of our rocks, you know, our beginning of our mountain. Play around with how you like the shape of it to look for this upper part. Don't be afraid to give it some, you know, interesting characters and kind of things like that. And the more you play around with it, the more it'll start to look to you like mountain shadow, like the silhouette of it against the sky. And you'll start to see stuff that you hadn't thought about and play around. And you can play around with this as much as you want or as little as you want. I kind of suggest maybe doing it quicker and not think about it, but just kind of throw it in there. Okay. So now we've got that there. So this could be our background mountain here. All right. So again, even if you can't draw, you can grab the rectangular tool, make your rectangles. You can grab the freehand. So like if you wanted to, like you were doing these and you were just kind of confident with it, you could come in and just really do it around. Like the dot. Hit enter. And then you would fill that and then kind of do the same thing. All right, so kind of where we got to by just using the rectangles. Control D deselects. But a little slight different way to get there. Okay. All right. If this is too distracting to you down here, then all you got to do is you can just grab something like the smudge stick, bring it up in size, go to blend. Now Bob would tell you to kind of blend in the direction of where the snow and stuff's going to be. So if you just kind of go back and forth, this is kind of a neat way to do it because you're going to get all these different variations of value here. So, and it will kind of give you an idea of what direction you want the mountain to kind of flow. But for right now, just do it on this bottom section only. Don't that crisp kind of top. Okay, so I'm just going to kind of fade this down a little bit. Really don't care about anything as far as the look of it. And then I'll really want to fade it out, so I'm going to go with this soft blending brush and just kind of softly come along here, like swirling a brush across it. It gives that nice misty kind of bottom to it. So even just with that, I mean, it's not obviously not a finished painting, but you can see where you're going now. You know, you can see where we're headed, right? Okay. So now let's go back to the brushes. Now this smudge stick one, you can use this to do your rocks. I do have stencils that'll make your life easier if you want that broken paint kind of palette knife look. So you can use those. But I'm just going to go with the smudge stick for right now. And I'm going to grab this color here, which is still in this Prussian blue, cerulean blue, I mean, kind of look. It's over here to the side. And I'm also going to come down here and I'm going to turn on this lock transparency. So why am I doing that? So now if I go to paint, I can paint and keep my edges up here. Okay. But you see how by selecting that lighter color and then using the smudge stick, it lets me kind of paint in where I want to start building up some of my, and this smudge stick is designed to break like this. I also have one here called a mountain knife. Let me bring that up inside. This one is specifically designed to give that a little bit more of a palette knife kind of a look. And with this one, you just want, it's going to put down more paint at this point because I've got it set to 100%. But I can just kind of throw this in. I can hit 4. Kind of smudging it in. And so all I'm doing is just thinking about what direction is my mountain going to flow. You know, I want it to lay out. Just like when Bob did his paintings, he very much did a very specific light side and a very specific dark side to them. So you can see here, it's very delineated. All right, so we'll do some of that as well. But for right now, let's just kind of lay in some of these shadow areas. So I'm going to press 1. Keep all of these kind of flowing down this way and around for this side. It just kind of helps your brain kind of understand the flow of the light and the flow of the land. So it's a simplistic way of doing it. Keep this color kind of on the left side of all these because the light is kind of coming more from the right over here. It's kind of a diffuse light more than anything. But and have areas where you kind of skip for kind of softly blend those back up and down. So this starts going into our question of how do I get that look for far away stuff. This is partially how you start laying in things that have an implied or an impression, hence impressionistic painting, an impression of what is going on. Your brain will fill in a lot of the information. So, I mean, if you look at this and just the sheer facts of this, these are just smudges. Your brain sees rocks, but there's no rocks there. You know, it's just an impression of breaks and, you know, and crevices and boulders and stuff like that, because we know that mountains off in the distance have that kind of a look. So that's what we see. Okay. And that's why this works, and Bob would do this with his stuff. You would also see with other painters, you know, Bill Alexander, who Bob learned from. You would see it from traditional painters of you know, impressionistic painters of the time that would paint all these different mountains and things like that. They're using the same techniques. They just may do it a little bit more refined than Bob was doing, or what I may do on here, because again, we're trying to do something in like an hour or 30 minutes and try to quickly get it down so you can kind of see the idea. From there, once you understand how the base of this works, you can start building it out and doing what you want to do with it. So you could take it more detailed, okay, especially with digital. You have nothing to lose with digital. You're not wasting any paint. You're not having any issues to where it's like you can't undo it. I do recommend, as you get more and more comfortable with it, there is Control Z, which is the undo button. Try to not undo stuff as much, but try to paint over it. So I'm going to grab this cloud color right here. And I'm just going to throw a little bit of it in here, and I'm going to press 4. And I'm going to smear this in. So I did that so I could get this color. And move it back up to more of a yellow. But you could even take it more to an orange. But see, that was kind of more of a bluish purple. This is more of an orangish color. And this is going to lay the foundation for our side that's getting hit with light. So anyway, but the impression is, the way of giving the impression is to lay in details, but not that much detail. In other words, we want just a hint so that we can see that there is a transition of light, of different tones, of cool and warm, and it's coming around, but it's not, and there, our brain's going to fill in what it thinks it sees, and that's this broken paint that is rock. Honestly, some of that we think of because from watching Bob Ross. It's like, well, his palette knife made it look like a rock, so therefore it must be a rock. Then I go out and I look at a mountain, and I see those broken areas of rock and everything else, so then it kind of connects it and reinforces it, and that's what we see. So the key is put just enough detail that you can make out kind of what it is, but at the same time, don't put too much detail. Only put the detail in the areas that you want to really kind of focus on. So that way it makes sense for what you're trying to pull into. I hope that makes sense. It's kind of hard to explain. Anyway, atmospheric perspective is just enough information for you to tell what it is, but not so much details that it throws off what you're looking at. Because as something gets closer to you, you're going to have more details. And that's where the atmospheric perspective comes in. So like you start playing around with sizes of trees. The smaller they are, the further away they are, the less detailed they are, the more they look like they're in the distance. The closer they get, the bigger the details. Even if it's, not the most refined details, it still makes them look closer, because let's see, like these trees here. Those were just bluish colors, and they're just, bumps more than anything. These here, these are still smashes of color, but because the way it's sitting here, we read it as tree limbs, and therefore, because we read it as tree limbs, it seems closer because now we have more detail in here. Now there's some implied detail back here where you've got those crisp darks and lights, but it's still not much detail. But our brain reads it as enough to understand this is a mountain, and enough to pull our eye to it. Also the fact it's in the middle of the painting. But that's how you start getting some of this atmospheric. Notice too that the farther back these are, the bluer they are, because the further back something is, the more blue it's going to get, especially if it's down here where you might have more diffused color, and diffused lighting for the color, and so it's going to give you that kind of bluish color, like right in here. But then up here, as the light gets clearer, it gets less diffused, you're going to have these high spots that'll make it pop and really bring it in for what you're seeing. So that's how you start to get that atmospheric perspective. So now we've got that there. Let me save this real quick before we have any issues, because I'm going to save both. Okay, so I've got that saved. We've been having a lot of little power outages, so it's just everything was like, oh. So anyway, now I've got, like I said, the warm color here. I've got just enough implied direction, breaks of paint, and all that really gives that feeling of light, shadow, darkness, but not a whole lot. These are all very mid-tones. You notice that we're still... So now I'm going to put a little bit more blue over here, and I'm going to grab kind of this blue. Now, if you like these, and you're like, again, I don't want to mess those up, make a new layer, all right? And you can come down here if you really want to maintain it. So double-click it. That way you kind of know where you're at with stuff. So this layer right here. So I'm going to put this blue kind of on here. That's a little bit too bright. It's also too green. So I'm going to switch it back over here. Come back down. That's a little too close to that one. Come up a little bit. There we go. And let's kind of blend this around. Now, if I want to make sure that I'm staying within the lines of the mountain, I can just control-click on that layer, and still on the layer above it, I can paint in and not have to go. So you just ignored the marching ants here. Again, I'm using the mountain knife, just kind of let it do it responds to pressure. So just kind of let it kind of flow. Press 4. And just kind of fade it down. Press 4. Kind of fade it down. Press 1. Press 4. 1, 4, 1, 4. Press 5 if you want to get rid of a little bit of it. Then press 4 again. Now our mountain is bigger than what his looked like, which is fine. It depends on how much you want it to be the center star of the show. If you thought this was too big, then you just merge these mountain layers, then you can transform it to change the size. Totally up to you. So I've got some of that blues in there. Again, that cools it down, gives us a little bit of reflected light. So now we can put in some of our highlights. So I'm going to select this color with Alt and click, and I'm going to come from over here and put in just some of this brownish color. Again, 1 and 4. This is kind of an orange brown, almost like a burnt sienna. And I'm going to do it more towards the tops here. Because I'm just trying to glaze and tint that. So see how that kind of brings that forward a little bit and pushes that back, kind of plays off of each other. I think it works fantastic. All right, so I'm going to keep this, and I'm going to come over here. So this kind of a grayish, orangish, it's kind of a warm gray is what it is. And I'm going to use this to start laying in some of my snow. I am going to make a new layer. All right, so for this, just kind of skip around. For where you want to put the snow, and again 1 and 4. And I'm going to put some down here. Let's bring across some of this snow through here. And let's go a little bit more into the purple. And get kind of that blend of cool and warm. Let's go a little bit more blue, a little touch darker. I'm going to bring this over in front of that so it kind of pushes those back. And press 4. Just kind of soften it into the rocks. Again, paying attention to what the direction is of the mountain as it comes down into foothills. So that we've got some of that, and then come back up here. I'm going to press 1, and I'm going to just kind of put some smaller snow areas. That kind of helps define the edges a little more. You can grab some of that bluer snow through throw some of that in. Put a little bit down through here. So we kind of bridge the area across. Press 4. Just kind of soften it into each other. Just like that. Right click, merge layers. So now I have all those merged into this. And I'm going to come up here. I want this to be a warmer light, so we're going to go almost white. And let's make a new layer just so we can play around with it and not have to worry about our rocks. All right. Press 4. Just kind of blend that down. And that kind of helps give that snow cap feeling. Oh, let me show you this real quick. I'm not going to pay attention to this top up here. I'm just going to paint over it. And I'm going to grab this really peachy kind of color here, and I'm going to bring that over top of some of the snow. And I could even come up here and grab like maybe that bright yellow there. Now I am going to come back and break this edges up because these are too refined, too straight. So it looks like you've cut it out. So I'm going to break that up a little bit here in just a minute, and I'll show you how to do it. So again, this is at 100 zoom. But you can see there's no detail there, but when we step back from it, it looks like there's more detail there. Okay, that's what we want. You can always zoom it way out. Maybe we want to put some real darks down there, so let's do 1. Because maybe this is just really in shadow. Alright, and then 4. Then I can press 5. Because this is on another layer, I can really play around with it. And if I decide that's too much, I can either A, remove some of it and then fade it back in. Like so. Or I could just go back and completely delete it. Whichever one I feel is more appropriate. Also, the direction of the darks will help. Can give the impression of a cliff face. Like that. And maybe a little over here to kind of help pull that in a little bit. Now again, you could do similar by just duplicating this one. Going to multiply, bring the exposure down to about like 25, somewhere in there, 27, something like that. And it's going to give you that more of an intense color. And then you can come onto this one, press 5, and erase some of it away. And that'll help. So that's how you can get, some pretty good mountains to start off with, even if you can't. You can come back in with something like the China brush or any of these impastos and so forth. So let's say we want to throw a little bit more snow in here. We could come back in on a new layer and just kind of throw in some snow over top of what we've done. Let's go a little bit bluer. Press 4, kind of soften it out. There we go. You can come back to the smudge stick. If you want to get a little bit different texture than the knife, the mountain knife. Something maybe a little bit like that. You can also, on his, he's got a little bit of more rocks down through here. Which again kind of helps push the mountain back a little bit. And press 5, kind of clean some of that up a little bit. Really plays into the canvas texture. So we're going to get some of that canvas kind of going through. Press 4. just kind of give that just kind of. There we go for that part. Blend this over a little bit. On a new layer, and I'm just pressing 1 and 4. So 1 to lay down some pigment, 4 to spread it around. Just need some wisps of snow coming up through here. Okay. Oh, the one thing I was going to show you, let me go ahead and select this and right click and merge, is tidying up the top up here. So I've got the cat's tongue. I could really, let's go down to the mountain brush. Press 4. I'm just going to kind of come along the edge here. And picking up I can switch between like 5 and 4. 5 works really good for just if you want to go along the very top. And see how it just kind of roughs up that edge a little bit. I'm kind of staying with the same shapes and same stuff that we've done, but I just want to break up some of these sharp edges. And if you don't mind the sharp edges, you don't have to do this step. I just kind of like breaking it up a little bit, gives it a little bit more painterly feel instead of digital painterly. So now, trees. We'd want to do some distant trees. So let's do another layer and come down here. I do have a tree brush. If you want to make your life easier, you can do that. And you're going to go with kind of a bluish gray color. Hodgepodge shapes. Okay. What I want to do is bring those way down. And then I'm just going to kind of figure out where these might live and kind of follow the direction of my land here. That put in there, I'm going to press 4 and I'm going to come back over it. And I'm just at the bottom. Just kind of smear these out. I can even press 5 and delete from the top. So the interesting thing that you want here, left click, put it on 4, and just kind of smear the bottoms of this along my landscape. Kind of like that. Okay. So that kind of sets some of that in there. I'm going to come back down to my tree, go a little bit smaller, press 1, and just painting in vertical strokes. Leave a little bit of white. Press 4. No detail. The only detail here are the jagged tops. Okay. That is the only detail we have. Those are a little dark, so if you wanted to, you could come over here to that layer and just go a little bit lighter, maybe down to 70%. Alright, kind of like so. Now you can also duplicate this layer, come back in with 5, and kind of erase some here and there. Just going to break up that silhouette a little bit. Press 4, kind of smear it out. Just like so. And then we can blend that down. Just like that. And again, if that's too dark for you, you can always lighten it up a little bit. But we'll leave it for now. I'm going to grab that wet snow, press 4. I'm just going to kind of blend this like so. I may even press 1, select that color, paint some of that shadow in. Because this is going to sit behind these trees. just going to kind of come along where I think the lay of the land would be for this little valley down here. And I'm just going to lightly dirty it up, like so. Grab a little bit of that purple. Okay. So that's going to push that back, and it's really going to change once we put some more trees in the foreground here. So we'll make another layer. We can go back to our trees here. We can also come a little bit closer. Well, let's grab that again. Come up in size to right about there. And notice we're getting these a little bit bigger as they come towards us, and it's just a matter of going up and down to let this brush kind of throw in those random shapes. But by doing it this way where they get smaller, it gives that impression that it's moving away from you. Just like that. Back to the wet snow. Press 4. Throw a little bit more green in there. 4. Just to kind of break that up. Notice I'm leaving some of that blue. I'm not changing the whole thing to green. And we'll make another layer. So now we want to really put in some of our big trees. All right. So let's do that. Like Bob would say, this is your bravery test. So let's just, we need to start with just the basic shape first. So we're going to go with this. We're going to bring it up in size to its max. And we're just going to throw in some tree shapes. Like this. And we'll refine some of this in a minute. I'm just kind of laying out where some of the bigger stuff's going to go. So kind of like that. We can grab any of these brushes really. And just kind of start. Just kind of share. So that one's a little blurry looking. This is the one that I just used. But you can also, like if you did this big section up here, like you can erase it. there is watercolor. There is a fan brush. So let's copy this. So if you want to have kind of the fan brush, now this one, the tilt on it, which I can go in it. Here. So I can set her, and I can turn off random start. I can even turn off grains or trajectory and rotation. Let's increase that, increase that. Now I do have stencils that have tree shapes. So if you can't draw a tree, all right, I would say, practice, but from painting, use the tree stencil. This is literally just you draw a straight line. Is the bare minimum need. Okay. And I'm going to save the changes to that to lock that one in, kind of that shape. So now one of the things I want to do is we need to this some trunk. So some as much as you want. Okay. Same color, come up in size. And then we want to grab kind of a green, and we can just throw in some spots of green. These shapes might be. And that one question was if I'm too old. And this is kind of how you do it. You just put in some simple shapes. Now I'm going to put this on 4, kind of smudge this around because I want something. And just try to push this in front of some of the other trees. You could even go back to the tree brush. I'm going to go with the impression. I'm not drawing trees per se, I'm just putting in impressions of some of the spaces and stuff could be at. And that's the point of what I want to show you here, is that yes, you could be intimidating for you. Don't worry about it. Okay? Now one of the things with this, I'm going to take this. Now, I may even bring it over, and I may even as I can really play around here. You notice I'm going kind of straight down. I don't want to bend these trunks too much. There we go. Okay, so now I'm going to take this, I'm going to press 5. 4. I want to get rid of some of these because I'm there. Now I can press 4. Kind of bring this across. There we go. Something kind of like that. I could even grab my bush brush here. Grab my wet snow. Grab this purplish color. I'm just going to cover. Just kind of work that back and forth. So we got kind of that feeling of snow kind of pushing through. 4 just comes. Press 1. Bring out a little light to kind of bluish gold, which will kind of tie in with our color of color harmony. Your color. Maybe. TV this sponge. I'm gonna throw in some of that, and I'm gonna skin wet snow. Just kind of a bit more. And bush brush. Just gonna bring that down into here. Like that. Maybe one. Kind of push it around. Kind of look. Again, not so much Bob's painting, but it's more mine. That one, press 4, bring this on. Okay, and then I'm going to grab the wet snow again, a little bit of this color. Kind of blend. Out. I'd like to put a little bit of sticks and stuff like that in it, so I'm going to come back up here and I'll grab like the rice paper and just throw them sticks and colors. Up out of the snow, and then zoom in, press 4, and then just kind of snow, and then grab just a little bit of the stick itself. Eat them. Just like so. come down through here and do the same. Okay. Now, if you wanted to, like say you liked this, but like, maybe a little bit more dynamic, you could add snow. Actually, let me save this real quick. And a brain part. So it's up here in Windows, and then go down to Assets. Anyway, that's what was throwing me off. So import the stencil. I just imported space, and I'm going to make a new layer. And then I'm going to minimize this. Just drag it off over here. Zoom out. Make this large. And I'm going to grab the so I grab that and we'll press drag it around. Now you could also use the fill bucket. But I like doing it this way because it gives me over where stuff is. S5 and bring the opacity down and just randomly go around, erase some of them a little bit, and that's going to give me a different feel of some that are closer, some that are further. Click backspace. I've got snow coming across it. Now I can also go T, and I could turn it. I could stretch it like so. And you may be ever so slight and stretch. So that stretch is going to make it look like it's blowing in. Very subtle. But it does work. Put it over here, hit enter, and I could duplicate T, drag it over. It's very subtle, but it does work. So if you wanted to give it a little bit of snow, a little bit of movement, you could do that. So here is my version. Let me hit tab. And then here is Bob's version. A bit more in the forefront. You know, my tree brighter. So, but again, if I wanted, I could, because I have this mountain on another layer, if I wanted to make it a little bit darker, I could go duplicate, and I could bring that down. And then I don't want that because I like them being a little bit lighter color in blue. But what I was going to say was, oops, I could grab the mountains, and I could hit T, push them back further, or change the composition a little bit. I can press Shift and stretch them a little bit. My brush, grab this color, bring the opacity up, and just kind of quickly fill in area. And I could give it a little bit of texture. If I wanted. And then I've got that there. So it's like, okay, cool, that works. If I wanted to maybe bring this over, again, T. Maybe I want to bring it up here now. Stretch it out just a little bit, maybe. I want to bring this one up more. You know, because maybe I decided, hey, I like that there. I like seeing that more. So I want to bring that around. So that's the nice thing about digital, is that you can play around. If you're doing everything on your different layers, you can play around with it. You can play around with these colors. So maybe that's too bright. Maybe that's too bright. So we come up here and we go to saturation. And we lower it. So it's a little bit different. Dark trees. And then we're like, maybe I want to play around. Color there a little bit. So I'm going to bump this around a little. Make it a little bluer. Make the saturation a little bit less. So now that really pulls us forward because they're dark and the, you know, it's again, you have control of this. If you wanted to get even more, I would do these trees on one layer, this snow on one layer, and all these shadows and twist and turn this around too. I could do that with just, you know, select it, cut it, paste it, put it on a new layer. You know, maybe you don't like the snow falling, so you get rid of that. The point is, you can do this. You can play around with it. You can paint it, to draw it as much. You can use the brushes and let some of the brushes do some of the work for you. And don't be afraid to mess around with it. If you really feel like you need the help, take an image of your own and trace it, and then draw it out. You know, paint it from there. So I hope this gives you encouragement. I hope this helps answer those questions of, am I too old? How do I paint distant trees? Perspective, you know, and all those kinds of things answered for you. There is one other thing that I think I might want to do. I'm going to put a layer right above this. On a chill morning like this, you would probably have some. So I'm going to grab this cloud brush. I'm going to grab maybe this color, but we'll go to the yellow side of it. In like so. Press 4. You can grab my. So it's just soft. I can press 5 and get rid of some of it. I think it does help to give it a little bit of a gap here and there, because it helps kind of define what it is. So to me that just adds a little bit more interest. And if you don't want to do this step, don't. But to me, this just adds a little bit something else to it. Like I said, I love Bob's work. He got me pretty much into painting. I always want to put my own flair on it. Make it mine, and I think that's pretty much something he would appreciate. There we go. I think that we're going to call this the one done. If you have questions, if this makes you wondering what to do or anything else, hit a reply in the comments. So